In March of 1991, as the world's attention remained fixed on the conflict in the Caribbean, tensions in the Persian Gulf quietly escalated. Iranian F-14 Tomcats and F-4 Phantoms were launched almost daily to intercept Australian P-3 Orions and British Nimrod patrol aircraft flying dangerously close to Iranian airspace. These NATO flights, often erratic in pattern and aggressive in proximity, tested Tehran's response times and resolve. Radar locks and close passes became routine, each encounter more brazen than the last, as the skies above the Gulf turned into a chessboard of provocation and restraint. While tensions escalated in the air, Iranian forces also increased their activity around key oil platforms in the Persian Gulf. Iranian helicopters began flying low over international rigs, often within a few hundred meters, observing crew movements and equipment. At the same time, IRGC fast boats, including boghammers, started circling the platforms at irregular hours, ignoring warnings and maintaining a close, threatening presence. Then, without warning, Iranian boats opened fire on multiple rigs operating in international waters. Explosions damaged equipment and started fires across the upper decks. Crew members scrambled to evacuate as the platforms burned. Tensions, already high, spiked sharply. The Gulf was no longer a zone of harassment, it had become a potential war zone. In response to the attacks on the oil rigs, the United States moved quickly to demonstrate force. Within 48 hours, the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt was ordered into the Persian Gulf, along with its full carrier strike group. The decision was made at the highest levels, aimed at deterring any further Iranian escalation and protecting coalition forces in the region. The presence of the Roosevelt was a clear message. Any further aggression would be met with overwhelming force. Coalition intelligence began monitoring Iranian naval and air assets more closely, and ROE were quietly updated across the theater. Though no direct confrontation occurred in the first days of the carrier's arrival, Iranian forces scaled back their patrol activity slightly. Still, the situation remained volatile, and planners in Bahrain and Riyadh began preparing for the possibility of a broader conflict. Despite the arrival of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, Iranian aggression escalated. On a clear morning over the Persian Gulf, 2 Iranian F-5Es intercepted an American Airlines flight en route from Tehran to Dubai, flying in international airspace. Without warning or communication, one of the Iranian fighters fired a short-range missile. The airliner was hit in the tail section and broke apart mid-air, killing all 187 passengers and crew. Tehran offered no explanation. The act sent shockwaves through the region. U.S. forces were immediately placed on high alert, and plans for direct retaliation were set into motion. Following the shootdown of the civilian airliner, the U.S. rapidly began staging forces in Qatar for a coordinated response. At Al Udeid Air Base, C-130s moved in troops, light vehicles, and supplies around the clock. Elements of the 82nd Airborne and Marine Corps set up forward positions under heightened alert. To support operations, E-3 Sentry AWACS and E-8 J-Stars aircraft arrived at Al Udeid, establishing a round-the-clock picture of air and ground activity across the Persian Gulf. With strike plans finalized and forces in position, the coalition stood ready. All that remained was the order to launch. At the port of Dammam, the U.S. military presence was growing by the day. Tarawa-class amphibious assault ships, Algol-class fast sea-lift vessels, and a stream of merchant transports packed the docks, each loaded with M1 Abrams tanks, armored personnel carriers, ammunition pallets, and essential logistics. Though the armored vehicles remained secured aboard the ships for now, cranes and offloading crews worked steadily to prepare for their eventual deployment. Marines, Army support units, and logistics personnel established temporary operation centers within the port itself, coordinating manifests and transport routes for what was becoming one of the largest U.S. buildups in the region since the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Behind closed doors, high-level military briefings discussed contingencies, and one possibility was being quietly voiced more often. If Iranian aggression continued to escalate, a full-scale ground invasion of Iran could be authorized. At 12:16 p.m., Iranian missile units launched a sudden salvo of Scud missiles toward Kuwait City. Air raid sirens blared as the incoming warheads raced across the Gulf. Within minutes, explosions tore through industrial sectors, residential neighborhoods, and areas near key oil infrastructure. Black smoke billowed into the midday sky as fires spread and civilians scrambled for cover. Emergency services struggled to contain the chaos. The strike marked a major escalation in the growing crisis. Coalition commanders placed all regional forces on high alert, and plans for a military response began moving forward. Iran had crossed a line, and retaliation was now inevitable. Hours after the missile strike on Kuwait City, the U.S. Navy responded with force. From the deck of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, a coordinated strike package was launched toward Iran's strategic port city of Bushehr. FA-18 Hornets and A-6E intruders roared off the carrier's deck, loaded with bombs to strike Iran. Their target, fuel depots, oil storage tanks, and key infrastructure surrounding the port. Explosions lit the coastline as flames engulfed refineries and logistics hubs, sending thick columns of smoke into the sky. The strike was swift, deliberate, and highly visible, a clear signal that further aggression would not go unanswered. Later the next day, as emergency crews in Bushehr worked to extinguish the smoldering remains of the earlier U.S. Navy strike, the silence was shattered once again. F-117 Nighthawks, flying from forward coalition airfields, returned under fading daylight. Their precision-guided bombs tore into the few surviving storage tanks and facilities. Fires that had just been brought under control erupted once more, this time spreading faster, fueled by ruptured pipelines and damaged containment systems. The port was plunged back into chaos. By nightfall, operations at Bushehr had ceased entirely. The city's logistical heartbeat had been extinguished, leaving nothing but flame and twisted steel. As flames still burned in Bushehr, the skies above the Persian Gulf turned hostile. In the early afternoon, a formation of U.S. Air Force F-16s flying combat air patrol out of Qatar picked up fast-moving contacts on radar. Iranian F-4 Phantoms had scrambled from bases inland, closing fast. Within minutes, the two forces clashed over open water. The engagement was sharp and aggressive. Flares streaked across the sky as missiles locked on. One Iranian Phantom went down in flames, another destroyed by a missile and fell into the water below. This marked the first air-to-air engagement of the war.